Welcome to the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Here are your hosts, Shannon Murray of Fox 4 and UNT System Chancellor, Lesa Roe. Take it away, ladies.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Gaps podcast. I'm Shannon Murray of Fox 4. Joining me as co-host is UNT System Chancellor Lesa Roe. We are recording today's episode from our brand new UNT System Media Studio in downtown Dallas. Lesa, what is going on with you?
There is a lot going on. We just announced a new branch in Frisco to meet the needs of that growing region there. And we just did groundbreaking for a new wing for our biomedical engineering building. Our first class for biomedical engineering graduates this weekend. And overall, this weekend, we're going to graduate over 10,000 students over the next 2 weekends at our UNT Denton site, at our UNT Dallas site, at our UNT Health Science Center in Fort Worth. So it's going to be crazy busy. What about you, Shannon? What's going on with you? Any interesting assignments lately at Fox?
Oh, there have been so many assignments. There's no shortage of news in Dallas-Fort Worth. I actually just did a story at UNT, so it feels appropriate to bring it up, about a woman who is a grandmother graduating this May. And so it was such a great story to be able to share. And that what's so amazing about her is her daughter works at UNT. Her grandkids also go to UNT. They're all graduating over the next couple of years. So it's one big family going to college there. It was really actually a very appropriate story for this podcast too, about bridging gaps and sort of the importance of education. And no matter what point in life, you can go back and still finish college if that's something you want to do. So that was a really great story lately. But really the big thing in the news world for me personally is, we just expanded our newscasts from 4:30 to 9 a.m. to now 4 to 9 a.m. So 5 hours of news on good day every morning. So that means, my alarm clock goes off even earlier, but I also get to leave a little earlier most days. So it's a lot of news to cover in 5 hours, of course. So I also just saw recently you were featured in the news in the Sunday edition of the Dallas Morning News. You got to share about your background with NASA and also being a first-generation college student.
Yeah, I sure did. I was able to talk about what changed my life, and that's truly the power of a degree. And how important it is to be able to get first-generation students into college. And with that, I've started a Bridging Gaps scholarship to do just exactly that. It's for our University of North Texas institutions, so the students will be awarded scholarships to our UNT site, our UNT Dallas site, or our UNT Health Science Center. And so really for those listening, this is a chance for you to engage, fund a first-generation student, help mentor that student. This is for our kids to get those minds engaged, and who knows what discoveries are going to come from that.
Well, let's jump into today's topic, one that should be really important to you personally: women in STEM. Of course, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, and something that you've really lived and breathed throughout your career and with NASA.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We couldn't get our missions done at NASA without engaging people from diverse backgrounds. You really just need that different thought in our missions, and so we really focused on that. And I think what people don't really know is that women make up half of our educated college workers, but only make up 25% of college-educated STEM workers. And so we really need to move that needle. And while women hold as many undergraduate degrees as men, overall they make up only 30% of STEM degree holders. And so that's part of the discussion today, is really to get into what do we need to do to change that. I know within NASA we were doing things like working on role modeling to try to help with that hands-on work. That really made a difference with girls and women and working in STEM. And so we were doing something about that at our University of North Texas system as well. And Shannon, our guest today, I know, is doing something about that right here at the Perot Museum.
Right, and I've been to the Perot Museum before. It's so awesome. It's such a fun place to go, especially if you have kids or if you want to go as a family and really experience everything STEM related, really. And so why is that relevant to our show today? Well, besides being a great place to visit. We've also got a special guest joining us in the next segment to talk about women in STEM, today's topic. Dr. Linda Silver, the CEO of the Perot Museum of Nature and Science. So you won't want to miss hearing about her international career in STEM. Listeners, please feel free to weigh in with us on Twitter at Chancellor Roe and at Shannon M. Fox 4 and give us a follow. Let us know what you think or any questions you might have. You are listening to the Bridging Gaps podcast with Shannon Murray and Lesa Roe. We'll be right back.
Together we.
Like the Tower Green to celebrate victory.
Together we
are building Dallas's emerging urban university.
Together we
are finding ways to fight Alzheimer's disease.
We are the University of North Texas, the UNT Health Science Center, and the University of North Texas at Dallas. Together we are the UNT system. To learn more about the UNT system, visit untsystem.edu.
Welcome back to the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Here are your hosts, Shannon Murray of Fox 4 and Chancellor Lesa Roe.
Welcome back to the Bridging Gaps podcast with Lesa Roe and me, Shannon Murray. We're looking at science, technology, engineering, and math careers today from a female perspective. And our guest is Dr. Linda Silver. Dr. Linda Silver is the boss lady for an attraction that is truly a Dallas treasure, the incredible Perot Museum of Nature and Science. If you've gone through downtown Dallas, you've probably seen the building. It's definitely becoming iconic for our downtown area. She came to Dallas from Abu Dhabi, where she led science and technology promotion initiatives for the government. Prior to her work in Abu Dhabi, Dr. Linda Silver spent 8 years as president and CEO of Great Lakes Science Center in Cleveland, 13 years with the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. Linda, welcome to Bridging Gaps.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
How's it going so far? You've been here since July, you said.
Since July. I moved to Dallas in July. Everybody said I was crazy until I told them that I was moving from Abu Dhabi, and it was actually cooler here.
Right. Well, and so tell us about what's going on with the Perot Museum right now. Like I mentioned, it's just such a great place to take your family and kids, and there's really something for everyone to really experience there.
It really is. It's for families, it's for adults, really for everybody in Dallas and beyond. It is a 5-year-old institution, so we celebrated our 5th anniversary last December, and has this wonderful history of having been Dallas's early natural history museum, science museum, and children's museum all brought together. So for people who don't necessarily know, we have this rich history in both research, collections, and interactive science, all under one roof now at the Perot Museum. Opened our very first totally renovated hall since the museum opened 5 years ago. So our Being Human Hall, brand new and really reflective of where we think we're going to be going in the future. So I invite everybody to come down and see it.
So what exactly is that?
So this is one of our major permanent exhibition halls. The Being Human Hall talks all about what it is to be us, looks biologically at the unique things that make humans humans. So everything from our human origins and that story to our DNA, our brains, our voice, our face, how we use facial recognition, the way that we walk, really helps us explore the uniqueness of being human.
What's your favorite thing in the Perot Museum?
Oh gosh, that's so hard. That's like, which is your favorite child, right? So there are a number of things that I absolutely love, and a number of things that are coming up that we'll unveil this summer that I think that you'll love even more. But to begin with, we're piloting a brand new virtual reality experience. It's the first time we've done something like this. We created an alliance with the paleoanthropologist Dr. Lee Berger that we announced just a couple of weeks ago. And we have a new center for the Center for the Exploration of the Human Journey. And a part of that is linking back to the work that Dr. Berger is doing in Human Origins. So we've created an exhibition that is virtual reality, actually going into the cave sites where he has uncovered new hominin species related to humans. And in that experience, you can essentially pretend that you're a paleoanthropologist. You can pick up and manipulate the different fossils that have been found there. And I think in terms of engaging kids in science, it's a really unique experience and one that I hope will be popular going forward.
So tell us about your career path that led you to Dallas from Abu Dhabi. I mean, that's just so incredible that you lived there. And what was the culture like there for women specifically?
Yeah. Well, it was a really interesting period. Originally, I'm from California, so I grew up in the United States and spent the early part of my career in Los Angeles, and then again, as you mentioned earlier, in the Midwest, but had an opportunity to go to Abu Dhabi and work for the government of Abu Dhabi. So I was there for almost 7 years, and was working with them to really develop an informal science education infrastructure for them. So it's a new country, 45 years old or so, and their economy runs off of their oil and gas reserves. What they're interested in is looking at developing industry verticals going forward that diversify that, and all of those industry verticals are related to STEM. And so my job there was to help get the youth, the young people of Abu Dhabi, interested in first studying STEM careers in school, and then long-term making the choice to go into STEM jobs and to work for it. So that was the reason that I was there. Working as a woman there, I would say, was really interesting. I think that people would probably have all kinds of preconceived ideas of what it might be like, or that it might be restrictive. And what I would say is it was probably one of the most welcoming countries that I've ever visited. It was easy to work there as a woman. I could drive. I didn't have to cover my hair. Those are all the questions, right, that you get first and foremostly. And a really just gracious and generous culture there. So I felt like I could get a lot done, and I could do it in a way that was meaningful, that was authentic, and that was purposeful.
How long were you there?
I was there for almost 7 years.
So did your kids live there with you as well?
They did. So my children went to the American Community School there, and spent 6 academic school years going to school with kids from all over the world, and frankly traveling all over the world as well from that space. I think it's made them very different individuals, and it's definitely given them a lens back to the US and how we look from the outside. And it makes them think differently about global questions, I guess you could say.
So being now the new kids in Dallas, they're probably the most popular, coolest kids at school, with all these incredible stories to share too.
I don't think so, but they're enjoying themselves, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Linda, let's jump into our topic of the day, women in STEM. How have things changed in this space in recent years?
Well, I'm sure you can share a lot of this experience as well. But it's interesting. I've been in museums, specifically in science museums, for the last 25 years. And what I would say is that early on, I was probably one of very few women who were in the room, or certainly at decision-making levels. This morning, we opened a new exhibition, and in that room were 3 PhDs, and all of them were women. So I think I've seen growth of women being involved,
That's great.
Growth of women securing degrees like these, and being more of the decision maker in the room than we had been, I think, 20 years ago.
So can you tell me more about what you've discovered? How do you engage girls in STEM?
Sure.
How do you get them started?
Yeah. So we talk about children in general, and then about girls in particular. And the things that are important when we're looking at workforce development, and we're looking at what encourages people to choose a career path in STEM, there are a couple of data points that are really interesting. The first is that the single strongest predictor for somebody selecting a career long-term in science and technology is their interest in science, measured between the ages of 6 years old and 11 years old. So that's the single strongest predictor. It's more predictive than grades or how you do in school or what your parents do. And so if you look at that, the Perot Museum and other informal science providers have a real responsibility of sparking that interest early and then maintaining that interest long term. And when you talk to scientists in the United States, the majority of them will also point to an experience that happened outside of school that sparked that initial curiosity. So visiting a museum, visiting a zoo, going to a science center, it really has powerful impact. So you take those 2 data points together, and we realize that we have a big responsibility in terms of helping the future workforce develop, especially here in Dallas. When you layer girls onto that as well, what we find is that it's particularly important for them to be able to see role models more so than it is with boys. And so ensuring that they see women who are research scientists, who are working in the field, who are doing good work is incredibly important. And so as we're bringing on new areas for the Perot Museum, like our Center for the Exploration of the Human Journey, you'll see that the lead of that center is a research scientist who is a woman. When we opened our Being Human Hall, we featured Dr. Helen Hobbs, who is a researcher, winner of the Breakthrough Prize. It's important for girls to see other women in these roles.
Why do you think it's so important, really in any field, just to have that diversity, whether it's, different backgrounds, male, female, different races, all in one field together?
Well, I think it's about personal relevancy. You need to see yourself in a place that is attainable to you, right? And so when you think about scientists and you look at these old tests like Draw a Scientist test, unfortunately, what you saw 10, 20 years ago is still a little bit of what you see, which is you ask children to draw a scientist and you will end up with a white male in a lab coat with wire rim glasses and somebody who looks like he's socially isolated, not very interesting, and not really having any fun. So we need to see more women, to your point, and more diversity reflected so that those scientists don't keep looking like somebody from 50 years ago.
And you mentioned the importance of outside experiences that really influence someone's career choice. And I know so many of our meteorologists and the women, they'll go and they'll talk to classrooms and meet younger kids. And I always hear stories from those families that say, oh, I saw Jennifer Myers or Ali Turiano and they were speaking at my school. And now my daughter wants to be a scientist or wants to be a meteorologist. So it's really true that can really influence someone's decision in their career in the long term, even at such a young age.
It's more important, I'd say, at a young age, because it's about getting that inspiration and being able to personally see yourself in that role long term. And having that exposure and that access is something that we're responsible for, and we need to be able to provide those opportunities.
Right, and kids don't forget those things.
They don't.
So what could universities do? I mean, now as the chancellor, obviously I'm wearing a new hat.
Yes.
And so what can we do to better engage from your vantage point?
So I would say you have research scientists who are women. Those women should be made more visible. You have research scientists who are not white males. They should also be made more visible. So it's about public outreach, and that can be done through places like the Perot Museum or through opportunities like this podcast or other ways of getting into schools. One thing that we're currently doing with UNT is pre-service programs for teachers. So we're looking at how to provide best in classroom practice, things that we know from informal science education. How can we impart those things to your teachers? And the teachers that you are giving us as part of that professional development program are, for the most part, female minority. And so that's really another way that you can be a partner in all of this going forward.
So I know the Perot Museum has a partnership with UNT Dallas. Tell us a little bit more about that relationship there.
So this is the pre-service teacher development partnership that I was just mentioning, and it's a program where almost 400 undergraduate pre-service teachers have participated since we launched the program in 2013. And one of the things that we know, especially at elementary school, is that science isn't really taught well in the United States. And a lot of it is because teachers at the elementary level don't have a background in science, don't feel comfortable necessarily teaching that science, and don't necessarily have the classroom practice to be able to do it effectively. And so what our intent in working with your education students is to help them understand what kind of strategies we use in an informal environment that can translate into their classroom practice and make the science more interesting, more hands-on, more experiential, and therefore more accessible to more kids.
So wearing my old hat, what's the Perot Museum doing with NASA?
Well, space, as you probably know, is one of the gateway drugs we feel to science. So between space and dinosaurs, we can pretty much capture everyone. We this last year have had a really wonderful run of an exhibition called Journey to Space, which looked at how astronauts live on board the International Space Station. We have a universe gallery that talks about space exploration, space science, and connects back to what NASA is doing. We also, in our Dynamic Earth Hall, use a lot of NASA data to look at things like weather, climate, and discuss issues such as climate change. So we see NASA as a great partner, and longer term, hope to be able to use more and more of the data that they produce and make public in our exhibitions and our education programs.
Great. Dr. Linda Silver, thank you so much for being here with us today. Just really fascinating work you're doing for the Perot Museum. And like Lesa, you both are just such an inspiration for young girls looking to find a career path in the STEM field. So thank you for joining us today. Lesa and I will be right back on the Bridging Gaps podcast.
The University of North Texas system is the only university system based in Dallas-Fort Worth, the nation's #1 job market. Our robust system is focused on providing work-ready graduates to our booming region while uplifting the lives of our students through education. Between our 3 institutions, the UNT system awards more than 9,000 degrees each year, including the largest number of master's and doctoral degrees in the DFW region. To learn more, visit us at untsystem.edu. Welcome back to the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Here are your hosts, Shannon Murray of Fox 4 and Chancellor Lesa Roe.
Welcome back. We just heard from Dr. Linda Silver with the Perot Museum. So interesting to have the conversation between both of you, since you're both female figures in STEM who really are role models to other young girls who might be listening or might be curious about a career in science. So what do you think the future looks like for women in STEM, Lesa?
I think the future is bright. I mean, when you heard Dr. Silver talk about the kind of things that are being done at the Perot Museum, the work that's being done in NASA, certainly we have a lot of progress to make, but by engaging our young girls and women in STEM and to really understand the power of STEM and what they can do, how it can change our world for the better, and what they can do to truly make a difference in that world, I think you're going to start to see our numbers climb.
We talked a lot about how important it is to really engage younger people in general and women specifically and younger girls to get them interested in STEM. But what about for you? I mean, how did you really get into that field? What sparked your interest?
I think what really sparked my interest was my ability to see that I could do it. Mm-hmm. That hands-on experience. And I got to see, I've always wanted to feel like I was making a difference too. And so when you start to see how you can do things in science, technology, engineering, and math, you really start to see that you can change the world. And so I think that's what's really important to a lot of young girls.
Well, and when you realize you're good at something too, and you have that confidence, you want to keep doing it and keep pursuing it. And I think that's true in probably any path that anyone takes. So especially in science too, because to me, science was always a challenge. I was definitely more of a English reading minded person. And I thought science was really hard, but I still think it's cool. And I love to go to the Perot Museum and see those kinds of exhibits and engage with some of the different things they have there. And I did a story there that was really fascinating because they have a partnership with a hospital where kids who are not able to come visit the museum can still tour it through a robot system that they have, where they have tour guides taking the kids through there with the kids have these video game like controllers they can use to tour the museum. So I think it's awesome to see how they really are engaging children all over.
I think what can make it seem hard is when it's just on paper, when it comes to life through virtual reality, or when they're actually able to have real life experiments and really get to see it. That's when it makes a difference. That's when the light comes on.
What would be your message maybe to parents or adults who might hear this, who have young girls or have kids, about how they can really sort of engage their kids in this?
Get them out to the Perot Museum.
Yeah. Perfect. Lesa, this was fun. We now have 2 shows under our belts. We're eager for the next discussion here on the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Thank you to Dr. Linda Silver for joining us today. If you have a young person in your house interested in STEM fields, or if you're just looking for an interactive, fun, and enlightening day, make sure to visit the incredible Perot Museum of Nature and Science. You can visit www.perotmuseum.org to learn about the latest exhibits and offerings at one of Dallas's best attractions. Lisa, any last thoughts? I know you mentioned your scholarship earlier, and we want to make sure and get the website out there for people who might be interested.
Yes, we absolutely do. For those interested in doing that, really to sponsor a student through my Bridging Gap Scholarship, it's untsystem.edu/scholarship. And we would really love it if folks would engage in that. And as far as today, I thought this was just a great segment. Engaging young girls and women in solving problems early really lights a fire, really helps women see how they can make a difference and change the world for the better. So thanks so much to Dr. Silver for being with us today and all that she is doing to change the world.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to the UNT system for supporting the Bridging Gaps podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Chancellor Roe and at Shannon M. Fox 4. Send us your questions, your comments, any guest ideas. We would love to hear from you. Bridging Gaps is a monthly podcast. You can find us in a number of places, including DallasInnovates.com and iTunes. Until next month, I'm Fox 4's Shannon Murray. For UNT System Chancellor Lesa Roe, I say thank you for listening. We'll catch up with you on the next episode of Bridging Gaps.